Members of ISIS appear to be returning home to Iraq. According to security analysts advising Iraq's government and foreign aid agencies, in just the last 8 months, about 1,000 fighters have crossed into Iraq, most in the aftermath of the Caliphate's collapse in Syria back in March. The ISIS members are made up of mostly Iraqis who followed ISIS into Syria and are now returning home to join militant cells. They're said to have been digging into rugged rural areas, raising questions about whether the terrorist group has really been defeated. Joining us for more on this, we turn to investigative journalist Ben Swann. Ben, you're an expert on this field, basically. You've been following this story since ISIS first started making headlines. Are you surprised by any of these new developments?
No, not surprised at all. I think the good news in these developments is that when you watch these ISIS fighters who are moving back from Syria into Iraq, the good news is that this time they're not moving back and able to confiscate all the U.S. weapons and military equipment left behind after the Iraq War, which is what happened the last time when fighters crossed over from Syria and they went back into Iraq. It's how they became so heavily armed. It's how they became so able to go back into Syria and create the kind of problems that they created. They were trained, many of them, by U.S. and coalition forces, originally not as ISIS, but as insurgents to go into Syria. They just went into Iraq and picked up heavy weaponry, and then they were out of control. So the good news is they're flowing back into Iraq, but not to pick up the same kind of equipment they got the first time.
Okay, well, that may be good news. I want to ask you this. What are these areas they're popping up in? Are they city centers or actually populated areas?
No, they're not. That's the other good news, right, is that these are not heavy populated areas, nor are they city centers. They're mostly rural areas. In a lot of cases, they're hiding out in tunnels and in caves. It's very similar to the methodology used by al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden when they were in Afghanistan. It's what made them so difficult to find in Afghanistan, so difficult for U.S. troops to go in there and to get to where they are. Plus, remember, these are originally Iraqis who had been fighting in Syria, which, by the way, just want to point out, goes against that whole idea that the U.S. kept pushing, how these were Syrian freedom fighters fighting the Syrian war. These guys were Iraqis who were fighting in Syria. But they know the terrain in Iraq. They know the areas they're in. So they're going to be very hard to get out of these caves and the tunnels in which they're hiding right now.
Well, as you said, they know the region so well. It's their home. Trump has reiterated time and time again that ISIS has been defeated. Can ISIS and will ISIS ever really be defeated?
So insurgents, and I don't even like the term insurgents because these are Iraqis in Iraq, so they're not really insurgents, but their view of the world is never going to be defeated, right? The problem is that there have always been radicals in these areas who have wanted to reinstate a caliphate. That's not new. What has happened is that the United States, through going into originally the Iraq War, then what happened in Libya, what happened in Syria, is the U.S. keeps overturning these countries and removing the strongman who's in power. It happened in Egypt as well. And when you remove the strongman, like the Saddam Hussein, who, by the way, just want to remind viewers, hated al-Qaeda and was the U.S.'s #1 informant on al-Qaeda, when we remove him from power and create this power vacuum there, forces like ISIS will always emerge. You're never going to fully get rid of those people. What you have to have, and I hate to say this because it sounds bad, is you have to have a strong government in power who can control it. Saddam Hussein was able to do that. Muammar Gaddafi was able to do that. But when the U.S. goes in and removes those leaders, all of a sudden it's utter chaos.
Well, and that's something that we'll have to figure out if they're actually going to be able to take some sort of government control there to help fight ISIS. And now I want to stay in the region. Ben, earlier today, President Trump said that he wants Pakistan to help with the war in Afghanistan. Listen to what he said.
If we wanted to fight a war in Afghanistan and win it, I could win that war in a week. I just don't want to kill 10 million people. That if I wanted to win that war, Afghanistan would be wiped off the face of the earth. It would be gone. It would be over literally in 10 days.
All it takes is 10 days. This war has been the longest war in U.S. history, and it's been going on for almost 18 years. What do you think it's going to actually take to pull troops from the region?
Okay, so let me say two things. Number one, President Trump is right in what he said. If you don't care about the obliteration of entire people groups, yes, you can win just about any war in 10 days, certainly in Afghanistan, a nation that really could not defend itself against the full force of the United States military. Having said that, it would be genocide to go in there and just obliterate the entire country. So obviously that's off the table. The separate question is, how do you win a war against al-Qaeda and the Taliban? And that's the issue. Remember, al-Qaeda is who we went there to fight, but the Taliban is who we said that we were going to overthrow, remove them from power, give women the right to vote, give people freedom, Jeffersonian-style democracy in Afghanistan, and that hasn't worked, and that's why we remain there. But the truth is, Sarah, we cannot win that war. The Soviets couldn't defeat the Taliban and al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and they left. The U.S. can't do it either because they are dug in, and they will be there long after we're gone. It's just simply time to come home.
Well, and after 18 years, I think that says something. Thank you so much for your time, Ben Swann, investigative journalist.
Sarah, thanks.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.